Hey gang, it's Tuesday morning transformation. And guess what I'm going to talk about today? Massive mindset shift. What is your life's most dangerous problem? Life's most dangerous problem. Hey, the number one most dangerous problem is not knowing the difference between your mind and your intuition. Hey, get this. You are more powerful than you think. It's not you. Your power is in your intuition, and not knowing the difference between your mind and your intuition. Because I hear people say, I don't trust my intuition. Why? Because they had a feeling, they did something, their mind told them to do something else. They did that thing that was guided by their mind, and they got in big time trouble. Has anybody besides me that ever happened to? Like, God, I know I shouldn't do this. I have this feeling. But why do we do it? Because our mind wants us to meet emotional needs, and our intuition is guiding us along our best path. And that's the difference between our divinity, our intuition. Hey, Selena, love you. Our intuition that's guiding us, and our mind that has all our fears and all our past and wants us to survive. Because what our intuition is telling us to do is the right thing, is to take the higher road. And a lot of times that's the harder road. Sometimes the right road, the harder road, is the higher road, and our mind wants to take the easy road, right? And that's what happens. So we get guided by our emotions because we're trying to satisfy emotional needs when our intuition is really guiding us into our greater life purpose, right? So there's a difference between hearing, because we hear with our ears, and listening, right? There's a difference between hearing because we can hear that voice. And if you're kinesthetic and an empath like me, we get that gut feeling like, man, I know I shouldn't do this, or I know this is what I should do. And then our mind starts to justify it because it's the hard thing and because we're trying to satisfy the emotional needs. It's like, God, I knew I shouldn't have got in that relationship. But what happened? Well, I want to experience love, and I really want this person to be this. And we project on another person who we want them to be because we see the good in them, but our gut's telling us, don't go there. So I have a personal experience with that. And my second wife, we were laying in bed on a Sunday morning, and she was sleeping, and I rolled over, and I'm like, God, I love her so much. I just want to marry her. God, what should I do? Should I marry her? And then this loud voice, like I'm talking to you, yelling into this thing, hey, Kate, hey, Travis, glad you guys are here. This loud voice shouted, no. Okay, if you read the book, You Are More Powerful Than You Think, the story's in here. So I'm like, God, please tell me what to do. I want to marry. This voice, like I'm shouting at you, said no. I literally sat up in bed. I looked around like, who the heck just walked in the room? And of course, there was no one there. And then I look over to Cindy, who's sleeping to my left, and she's still sleeping. Where if a person yelled, they would have definitely woke her up. So this was, I don't know what it was, my intuition, God, who knows what it was. Hey, Paul, great to see you. Told me no, and I sat there and said, I love her so much, I'm going to do it anyway. I went against, I think that was more than intuition, and we got married. We loved each other so much, but we had all these challenges, challenge after challenge after challenge. She ended up passing away with cancer, which was the greatest pain in my life, but God has a way of turning tragedy into a blessing and a gift. God always has a way, because we know we have free will, right? Are we always going to make the right decision? Is our humanity going to get in the way of our divinity? No question. And so if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be able to love unconditionally like I do now. There might not be You Are More Powerful Than You Think book. There might not be millions of people. There definitely wouldn't be Tuesday morning transformations. So who knows what would have happened? I mean, I would have been on a completely different path in my life. So God has a way of taking, when we don't listen to our intuition, when we get stuck in our mind, when we know what's best for us and we make emotionally based decisions, and because we're also scared. Now, there's some people that say, well, my intuition is very strong and I listen to it, and that's great. But what happens when our mind gets in the way? We know what we should do, but fear gets in the way. Right now is fear. Intuition is faith. Our mind is fear. We have fear up here. Our heart is faith. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So, and sometimes that voice and the intuition is so small, it's just a whisper, but the emotional noise in our head of our past, and I don't want to do this, and I don't want to risk because I'm afraid of being vulnerable, and I'm afraid of being hurt, when this thing that we're supposed to do is our soul path. So, when we're younger, we learn over time. I mean, I just turned 59. I don't want any more pain. I learned how to listen to the whispers. I already cleared all the emotional noise out of my past by writing and processing through. You're more powerful than you think. Now I can hear the whispers, and I know life is so much easier. It's so much easier when you just follow that. But when you're young, you believe you're smarter than that, and I can get away with this, and I can do this, and I'm cavalier, and that was me. Thank you very much. And how many people know you go through your 20s? You go through your 20s, you think you have your shit together pretty well. And then you get in your 30s and you realize I didn't know crap when I was in my 20s, right? I was just a baby. But when you're in your 20s, you think you're all that and, and a box of two-ply toilet paper or whatever. And then you get in your 30s, think, okay, finally I have my crap together. Then you get in your 40s, like, I really didn't know very much in my 30s. And then you get in your 40s, I think you begin to really start to discover yourself. I'm in my 50s. And now it's like, man, now I don't want any more pain. I just listen to my intuition. So there's a quote from Samuel Smiles, a guide from the Advanced Soul, says, we learn wisdom from failure much more than success. And does that sound like anybody besides me, right? We often discover what we'll do by finding out what we'll not do. That's listening to our mind rather than our heart. And when those two are in conflict, that's when we have our biggest problem. And that's when we put ourselves in a situation of pain. So yet those who have never made a mistake probably never made a discovery, right? That's how we learn to listen to our intuition, is through pain. So I had another experience when I first came out with You Are More Powerful. God told me the process, right? And then I came across this gentleman, and he had a great record, New York Times bestseller. We have 100% success, all these books. New York Times, like, wow, that'd be cool if I had a New York Times bestseller title, because then I could get on TV and credibility. And what was driving that? My ego, because God told me no. So he was charging me all tens of thousands of dollars a month to create this whole marketing program, blah, blah, blah. In the meantime, he goes through a divorce. New York Times changes their qualifications, so a first-time author can't even become New York Times bestseller, while I'm paying him $30,000 a month to do all this marketing and all this stuff that never came to fruition. I had to walk away from $400,000. Why? Because I listened to my mind and not my heart, because my significance and I wanted a title got in the way. It took me like a couple of years to get over that one. Okay. So we had to completely change our strategy and get it out and let God tell us what to do, because God knows every time I try and do it. Gets very expensive. Anybody else? And expensive is the emotional pain. It's not always financial. The emotional expense is far worse than the financial expense. How many people know that? Now, here's the next thing. What's on the other side of listening to your intuition? Oh, this becomes hard. Hey, Gwen, Walter, David, Ty, thank you guys so much for being here. So what's on the other side for being here? Because your intuition knows your soul purpose. Your intuition knows why you're here. It's your divinity speaking to your humanity, guiding you along. So what's that mean? Here's a quote from Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. You are here to enable the divine purpose to unfold. You're here to allow the divine purpose to unfold. That's why you're here, right? So your life purpose is here in this life. So are you listening to the world with your ears? Are you hearing the world with your ears, or are you listening to your divine guidance? So here's a quote from Dalai Lama. Once you hear the Dharma is your life purpose. Once you hear the call to your destiny is assured. So once you hear the call, your destiny is assured. How you get there is that voice inside you. It's that gut feeling. It's listening to your intuition. It's how you find the right strategy instead of the wrong strategy. It's how you save money and a boatload of emotional pain. It's how you fulfill your soul purpose, which is why you're here. Now, here are 6 more challenges when you listen to your intuition, because listening to your intuition isn't always easy. Hey, you guys, Austin and Luciano, great to see you. So here's the other problem when you listen to that voice. Number one, your intuition is going to challenge you. Why? Because you got to step into the unknown. Now, I was listening to a tape. I go to Agape Spiritual Center, Lisa Nichols, world-class spiritual leader. This was a quote from her grandmother as she was growing up. Your conviction, that's your conviction toward your soul purpose, your conviction and your convenience don't live on the same block. Your conviction to your soul purpose and your convenience, they are not congruent. They are not the same. So your intuition is going to challenge you. That means you have to move in faith. Number two, your intuition is going to push you. Here's another quote I got from Sunday from Lisa. You can't create a new zip code of your present and future if you remain in the same zip code of your past. In other words, you can't live in the same emotional mindset zip code of your past and fulfill your future. That means you have to follow your intuition. That means your mind is going to experience fear and your faith is in your heart. It's that 18-inch journey, baby. It's the longest, shortest journey of your life. But if you're going to fulfill your soul purpose, you can't live in the zip code of your past and still fulfill your present and future. It ain't going to happen. We got to take a new zip code, which means what? We got to take the zip code of following divine guidance. Okay, here's number three. Your intuition will inspire you and give you visions and feelings. So your vision should be so big that you need God's help, right? It's like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. How am I going to affect lives? How am I going to, having a family, how am I going to raise my kids, right? We got the whole coronavirus thing. That's a whole nother issue that I'm going to make some videos on how to deal with that, go from fear to intuition, how to stay healthy. But it inspires you. You should have goals that are so big, visions that are so big that come from your heart. You need God's help. So Psalm 37, take delight in the Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart. What's that? That's faith, right? We're moving from mind, fear into faith, heart, and intuition. So it'll challenge you. It'll push you. It'll inspire you. Number four, it'll scare you. Your intuition will scare you, right? And Rick Sapio, famous business mentor, if it's not scary, it's probably not that interesting, right? How are we going to grow? Because our convenience and our conviction don't live in the same neighborhood. So immediately, we're going to have visions that are like, crap, how am I going to do that? That's scary. Where am I going to get the money? Where am I going to do this? How am I going to raise my kids? I may run into this problem. Your vision's going to be scary. Just know that. Number five, ready? Dispel. Your intuition is going to dispel your ego. Oh, man. God, that sounds like a lot of work, right? Because and this is from You're More Powerful, your greatest pain may lead to your greatest purpose. So it dispels your ego. Why? Because you got to move through the pain. So get this. Martin Luther King has two quotes. Two things that you need to do to be totally free. Two things you need to do to be totally free. Are you ready? One, you got to forgive everyone and everything that's ever happened in your past. You got to freaking let it go, man. You just got to let it go. Number one, to be free, you got to forgive. You got to get over it. You got to let go of your past. You can't stay in the same zip code of your past and fulfill the present and future in your vision. You got to change zip codes. You got to change mental, emotional mindsets. You got to move in faith and take that 18-inch journey from mind into heart. So it's going to dispel your ego. Second thing, number one, you got to forgive. Number two, lose the fear of death. Okay, so what's that mean? When you lose the fear of death, when you're not afraid of dying, what's that mean? Your conviction is greater than your convenience. You're going to step out. You're going to change mindset. You're going to take brave actions that take courage. Everyone still feels fear, but people that fulfill their vision, they have courage. It means they do it anyway. It means they're not stopped by the fear. It means they step out. Why? Because they're listening to their intuition. They're not paying attention to the fears in their mind. Why? Because they're not hearing what the world says. They're hearing what divine guidance says. They're following their heart. Number six. Are you ready? So number one, challenge you, push you, inspire you, scare you, dispel your ego. Number six, it's going to move you to another level of consciousness. What's that mean? We get rid of that old mental, emotional zip code. We take on a new zip code, and this is from You're More Powerful. You only have one problem in life. Yes, listening to your head instead of your intuition, the most dangerous problem. But how do you do that? You only really have one foundational problem, and that is your level of consciousness. When we raise our consciousness, then we get rid of the most dangerous problem. We learn that we are divine. We learn to move from our head to our heart. We learn to get out of fear, and we learn to live in faith. Man, that's from You Are More Powerful. So how about that? 6 things. When you do listen to your intuition, just know in advance, it's going to challenge you. It's going to push you. It's going to inspire you. It's going to scare the crap out of you. It's going to mean you got to get out of your ego, which means you got to get out of your mind and get in your heart. And it's going to move you into another level of consciousness, which is moving you from fear into faith. So your intuition is your guidance, your creativity, it's your inspiration. Now check this out. Last thing. I was listening to a pastor this morning. His name's Stephen Furtick, and he gave a talk on fear or faith. One has to win. Guess what? You can't focus on both. You can't focus on fear and faith. You can only focus on one. So wherever there's one, there's not the other. And it's your choice because you can't see either one of them, right? So let's choose faith. So here's what he says about fear versus faith. Your intuition is God guiding you, but it doesn't work until you act. I'm paraphrasing. That's the premise he went through. Your intuition is God guiding you. That's your innate divinity, but it only works. It doesn't work if you don't act, right? Faith without deeds is dead. You got to have faith, and then you got to freaking act, which means you got to move through. You got to have courage, move through your fear. Here's another one. Fear is what others say. Faith is what you do. Fear is what others say outside of you. Faith is what you do, right? So what's that mean? That means you got to do it anyway. That's how people change the world. That's how we change our life. That's how we raise our kids. That's how we stay in healthy marriages, because fear is what other people say. They're not going to agree with your soul purpose. Faith is what you do. That's how you fulfill your soul purpose. Here's another one. The absence of the storm is not proof of the presence of God. The absence of the storm is not proof of the absence of God. Just because you're in a storm doesn't mean that's the absence of God. There's a story when Peter gets out of the boat, 11 disciples in the boat, storm, the waves are boisterous. They see Jesus off in the distance. He calls them. Peter says, Jesus is at you. And Jesus says, come. One person out of 11, out of all the apostles, right? The other groups stay in the group. One person gets out of the boat and walks on water. Then he walks all this distance. He looks around to the waves. What starts happening? He starts hearing the noise of the world, the waves, the wind. He starts to sink. Walked all that way. Jesus puts out his hand and says, you have little faith, right? So he walks all this way, and then he changes, gets out of his heart, gets into his mind, steps out in his heart, gets in his mind, starts to sink. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go back and forth. But now you know it's going to scare you. It's going to dispel your ego. It's going to call you to a higher level. So the absence of the storm is not proof of the absence of God. Okay, and then last one. Fear may be what you go through. Faith is who you are. Fear may be what you go through. Those are the conditions of the world. Faith is who we are. That's who we are. We are divinity first. Hey, you are more powerful than you think means get the heck out of your mind. Get into the innate divinity and power inside you. Go to youaremorepowerful.com. Hey, if this can help you go from fear to faith, go from mind to heart, take the longest journey of our life, the longest, shortest, possibly easiest, it could be the easiest journey, go from fear into faith, fulfill your soul purpose, then we can all shift the consciousness. We can do this together, and we can make a difference in humanity. All right, love you guys. Thanks, Todd. See you next week. youaremorepowerful.com.